3 months after humanity walked away from the Galactic Council, the galaxy had become a very different place. The council chambers that had once been filled with representatives from hundreds of worlds now hosted meetings where only half the seats were occupied. Many species had simply stopped attending after their governments collapsed or their economies failed. The truth that nobody wanted to admit was now obvious to everyone. The galaxy needed humans far more than humans needed the galaxy. Captain Alex Murphy stood on the bridge of his ship, the Liberty, watching two alien fleets face each other across empty space. 6 months ago, Alex had been a council peacekeeper, following orders from alien commanders. Now, he commanded an independent fleet that worked for whoever could pay human rates for human expertise. The two fleets belonged to the hegemony and the free colonies, the same species that had resumed their ancient war when human peacekeepers left the border. For 4 months, they had been fighting battles that killed millions and accomplished nothing. Both sides were now exhausted and desperate for peace, but they did not know how to stop fighting. "Captain," reported his first officer, Commander Beth Rodriguez. "Both fleet commanders are requesting permission to come aboard for negotiations." Alex nodded. "Grant permission. Set up the main conference room, and Beth, make sure both sides understand our fees before we start." The negotiation process took 3 days. Alex and his team had to translate not just languages, but entire ways of thinking. The hegemony fought wars for honor and tradition. The free colonies fought for independence and freedom. Neither side understood what the other really wanted, which made compromise almost impossible. But humans were good at understanding different viewpoints and finding common ground. Alex had learned these skills during years of council service. Now he used them to help two exhausted enemies find a way to stop killing each other. "The hegemony can keep their traditional territories," Alex explained to both sides. "The free colonies get independence for their outer worlds. Both sides share the profits from the disputed mining systems. Everyone wins." "This is acceptable," said Admiral Kethron from the hegemony. "We agree to these terms," replied General Voxtar from the Free Colonies. The peace treaty was signed on the 4th day. Both sides paid Alex's fleet 50 million credits for the negotiation service. It was more money than the old council peacekeeping budget for an entire year, but both sides paid it gladly. The war had been costing them much more than that every week. "It is ironic," Alex told Beth as they watched the former enemies shake hands. "The council told us we were just another member species. Turns out we were the glue holding their entire civilization together." Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy. Human ships, human negotiators, and human engineers were showing up wherever there were problems to solve. The difference was that now they worked as independent contractors who charged whatever the market would bear. On the ruins of Kepler Station, a new structure was being built. The old station had exploded when alien engineers could not fix the human-designed reactor. The new station was being constructed by Terran Engineering Solutions, a human company that specialized in infrastructure projects. Project manager Sandra Hayes supervised the construction from a mobile command center. Sandra was a tough woman with blonde hair who had spent 10 years building stations for the council at council wages. Now she worked for herself and made 10 times as much money. "How long until the new reactor is online?" asked Administrator Velkar, the alien official in charge of the project. 6 more weeks, Sandra replied. "Assuming no delays in the supply chain." Velkar's crystalline body flashed nervous colors. "The shipping companies are charging enormous fees for deliveries to this sector. They say the area is still dangerous. Because of radiation from the old explosion?" "That's not my problem," Sandra said calmly. "My contract covers construction, not shipping. If you want me to arrange secure transport, that's an additional service that costs extra." This conversation would have been unthinkable 3 months ago. Back then, humans worked for fixed council salaries and solved problems because it was their job. Now they were business people who charged market rates for valuable services. Back on Earth, President Ryan Carter was hosting another meeting with desperate alien officials. This time, the visitors included Council High Speaker Zalthon and representatives from 12 different governments that had broken away from the Council. "The situation is getting worse every day," Zalthon admitted. His crystal shell looked dimmer than it had 3 months ago, as if the stress was literally draining his life energy. 3 more core worlds declared independence this week. The Merchant Guild has suspended all long-distance trade. Half the species in the Council can no longer afford to maintain their space fleets. President Carter listened politely while the aliens described their various crises: economic collapse, failed infrastructure, ongoing wars, political chaos. The list went on and on. Every problem they mentioned was something that humans had been quietly solving during their years of council membership. "We need a new arrangement," said Administrator Quintel, who represented the breakaway worlds. "The old council system clearly does not work, but we cannot survive as individual species either. We need some kind of organization that can coordinate between different worlds and solve galactic problems." "That sounds like a job for the council," Carter replied. "The council is finished," Zalthon said bitterly. "Too many species have left. Too many systems have stopped paying taxes. We do not have the resources or authority to govern anything anymore." Carter nodded as if he had expected this news. "So, what exactly are you proposing?" "A new organization," Quintel said eagerly. "Something based on cooperation instead of domination. The Terran Alliance could be expanded to include more species. Humans could provide coordination and problem-solving services. Other species could contribute resources and specialized knowledge." "In other words," Carter said, "you want humans to run galactic civilization for you." The aliens looked uncomfortable, but none of them disagreed. "The difference is that this time we would be honest about the arrangement," Zalthon said. "Humans would be recognized as the senior partners. You would have final authority over major decisions. The other species would be junior members who contribute what they can." Carter was quiet for a long moment. Outside the window, he could see alien ships arriving and departing from Earth's spaceports every few minutes. Representatives from hundreds of worlds came to Earth now seeking human help with their problems. The planet that had once been dismissed as unimportant was now the most important world in the galaxy. "You know what the really sad part is?" Carter said finally. "If you had offered us this kind of partnership 3 months ago, we probably would have accepted it gratefully. Humans want to help solve problems and make the galaxy a better place. That's just who we are." "And now?" Quintel asked hopefully. "Now we don't need your permission," Carter replied. "The Terran Alliance already includes 47 star systems and growing. We have trade agreements with over 200 worlds. Our economy is the strongest in the galaxy. We're already running a significant portion of galactic civilization, and we're doing it profitably." The alien delegates exchanged worried looks. They had come hoping to negotiate a new partnership with humans as senior partners. Instead, they were discovering that humans had already moved beyond needing any kind of formal galactic government. "So what happens to the rest of us?" Zalthon asked quietly. Carter stood and walked to the window, looking out at the busy sky above. "Earth. The same thing that happens to any business that treats its best employees badly. You figure out how to survive without them, or you go out of business." The galaxy had learned a lesson that took 3 months to fully understand. When you have people who solve your problems, fix your machines, negotiate your peace treaties, and keep your economy running, you treat them with respect. Because once they leave, you discover just how much you really needed them. The humans never did rejoin any galactic government. They didn't need to. The galaxy came to them instead. One crisis at a time, finally understanding the true value of the species they had so foolishly dismissed. Counselor Vex walked through the empty corridors of Research Station Alpha on Minerva 7th. His footsteps echoed strangely in the silence. 3 months ago, this place had been alive with activity. Scientists from across the galaxy had worked here on projects that promised to change the future. Now the lab stood empty. Equipment sat unused. Experiments had been abandoned halfway through completion. The human staff had vanished overnight, leaving behind only basic records and simple notes saying they had family emergencies. "Show me the main laboratory," Vex told his aide, a young Altarian named Kess. They entered a vast room filled with complex machinery. Computer screens showed error messages in languages Vex couldn't read. Warning lights blinked red and yellow across dozens of control panels. "Yeah, humans were running 17 different research projects here," Kess explained, reading from her tablet. "Medical research, energy development, agricultural improvements. All the work has stopped." Vex approached one of the machines. It looked simple enough, a large metal box with buttons and screens. But when he tried to operate it, nothing happened, the way it should. "Can't the other scientists continue the work?" he asked. Kess shook her head. The human researchers never shared their methods completely. They said they were still developing the processes. The alien scientists here only knew their small parts of each project. Vex felt a cold sensation in his stomach. This was happening at research facilities across the galaxy. Humans were leaving, and their work was dying with their departure. Admiral Kate Hudson guided her ship, the Wanderer, through the outer rim of Council space. Behind her, 15 other human vessels followed in formation. They carried scientists, engineers, teachers, and their families. All of them were leaving the only home they had known for generations. Kate's communications officer, Lieutenant Ben Park, approached her command chair. "Admiral, we're receiving distress signals from 3 different space stations." "What kind of distress?" Kate asked. "Life support failures. The aliens are requesting immediate human technical assistance." Kate looked at the navigation display. They could reach the nearest station in 6 hours. It would be easy to help. Humans had been helping for 50 years. "Send a response," Kate ordered. "Tell them we're sorry, but we have family emergencies to attend to." Lieutenant Park hesitated. "Ma'am, people might die if those systems fail." Kate turned to face him. "Ben, those same people never listened when we asked for equal treatment. They never cared when we told them the systems needed better maintenance. They only care about us when something breaks." She paused, looking at the young officer. "We spent 50 years keeping their machines running. Now they can learn to fix them themselves." On the industrial world of Korath, factory supervisor Ben Clark stood in the main production facility watching chaos unfold. Assembly lines that had run smoothly for decades were breaking down one by one. The alien workers stood around the machines, confused and frightened. Clith 9, the Korath plant manager, approached Ben with obvious distress. "The machines are failing. Nothing works correctly anymore." Ben looked at the production line. It was the same equipment he had designed and maintained for 8 years. Every improvement, every safety feature, every efficiency upgrade had come from human innovation. "What about your maintenance team?" Ben asked. "They know how to replace parts when you tell them to," Clith 9 replied. "But they don't understand how you know which parts need replacing." Ben nodded. The aliens had learned to follow instructions, but they had never learned to understand the systems themselves. They had been content to let humans do the thinking while they did the basic labor. "I'll be leaving tomorrow," Ben announced quietly. Clith 9's compound eyes widened. "Leaving? But the factory will shut down without you." "Then maybe you should have treated me like a partner instead of just a useful tool," Ben replied. He walked away, leaving Clith 9 staring at machines that were grinding to a halt without human knowledge to keep them running. Council Speaker Thylin stood before an emergency session in the Great Chamber. Representatives from across the galaxy had demanded answers. Reports were coming in from every sector about failing systems and abandoned human positions. "The situation is more serious than we first thought," Thylin announced to the assembled delegates. "Human departures are not isolated incidents. They appear to be coordinated." Counselor Zara of the Silicon Collective raised her metallic hand. Our manufacturing centers are operating at 30% efficiency. The humans who designed our production systems have all requested extended leave. The same is happening with our medical facilities, added Delegate Vor from the Healing Worlds. Human doctors and researchers have left suddenly. Our hospitals are struggling to operate equipment they designed. Thylan felt the weight of the crisis settling on his shoulders. For 50 years, the Council had functioned smoothly with humans, filling essential roles. They had been reliable, hard-working, and undemanding. The perfect support species. Now they were gone, and the Council was learning how much they had depended on human expertise. Dr. Alan Price supervised the evacuation of Genesis Research Station, humanity's most important scientific facility in Council space. His team worked efficiently, packing essential equipment and data storage devices. The station's AI system, built with human technology, announced warnings throughout the complex. Automated shutdown sequence initiated. All personnel must evacuate. Within 6 hours, Dr. Price's assistant, Jennifer Cole, approached with a worried expression. "Sir, the Zentari delegation is requesting a meeting. They want to discuss the shutdown." "Tell them we're busy," Dr. Price replied, continuing to pack research materials. "They're offering to double our research funding if we stay." Dr. Price stopped, packing, and looked at Jennifer. "Double our funding? Where was that offer when we asked for equal representation on research committees? Where was it when they rejected our proposals without discussion?" He returned to his work. "Money can't buy back 50 years of disrespect, Jennifer. We're leaving." The evacuation continued. Human scientists loaded ships with equipment they had designed and built. Research data that had taken decades to collect disappeared into secure storage. The knowledge that had driven galactic scientific progress for half a century was walking away. President Rachel Stone stood on the bridge of the massive generation ship New Earth. The vessel was one of 12 that humanity had been secretly constructing in the outer reaches of the galaxy. Each ship could carry 50,000 people and everything needed to start new colonies. Her aide, Commander Steve Parker, approached with the latest reports. "Ma'am, we've received confirmation from all sectors. The evacuation is proceeding on my schedule." Rachel nodded, looking at the display screen showing human ships converging from across the galaxy. "Any word from the Council?" "They're starting to realize what's happening," Steve replied. "Emergency sessions, urgent messages, demands for explanations." "And our response?" "The same as always. We're dealing with family matters." Rachel smiled. Slightly. It was the truth, in a way. Humanity was finally taking care of its own family instead of constantly serving others. The communications officer spoke up from her station. "Ma'am, we're receiving a priority message from Council Speaker Thylan. He's requesting immediate talks with human leadership." "Tell him I'm not available," Rachel replied. "Suggest he try again in a few years." On the mining world of Zarian 7, engineer Pete Collins watched the chaos unfold in the control center. Alien technicians pressed buttons randomly, hoping to keep the extraction systems running. Warning lights flashed as safety systems triggered shutdowns across the facility. Clack 7 approached Pete desperately. "The machines won't respond correctly. The production has stopped completely." Pete looked at screens showing system failures throughout the complex. Every safety protocol, every efficiency improvement, every automation system had been his creation. "Have you tried reading the manuals?" Pete asked. "The manuals are written in human technical language," Clack 7 replied. "We never learned to understand them completely." "Why not?" "Because you were always here to explain them." Pete packed the last of his personal belongings. "Well, now you'll have to learn, or hire someone who can teach you." He walked toward the exit, leaving behind 8 years of work and innovation. The aliens had been content to let humans do the complex thinking while they performed simple tasks. Now they would discover the true cost of that arrangement. The exodus continued across human space. Teachers left schools where alien children had learned to read and write. Engineers abandoned construction projects that had been planned for decades. Doctors closed medical facilities that had served alien populations for generations. Each departure was quiet and polite. Humans didn't make speeches or demands. They simply packed their belongings and left, taking with them the knowledge and skills that had kept galactic civilization running smoothly. The aliens were beginning to understand that losing the humans meant losing far more than just workers. They were losing the invisible foundation that had supported their way of life for 50 years, and humanity was just getting started. Dr. Alan Price stood in the command center of Genesis Research Station for the last time. Around him, the final group of human scientists gathered their remaining equipment. The station that had been humanity's greatest achievement in council, space was about to go dark forever. "Initiate final shutdown sequence," Alan commanded. The station's computer responded in its calm voice. "Shutdown sequence confirmed. All research data has been transferred to secure storage. Life support will maintain minimal function for 72 hours. Alan watched as screens throughout the facility began going black, one by one. 50 years of human scientific advancement was leaving with them. The aliens had always assumed this knowledge belonged to everyone, but they had never bothered to learn how any of it actually worked. His colleague, Dr. Nancy Wright, approached with the final data storage unit. "All the genetic research is secured. The medical breakthrough files are encrypted." "Good," Alan replied. "The council wanted to treat us like servants. Now they can discover what it means to lose the people who actually understand their technology." The last transport ship waited at the docking bay. As the human scientists boarded, automated systems throughout the station began their final shutdown. Lights dimmed, machines powered down. The greatest research facility in the galaxy was becoming a tomb of abandoned dreams. President Rachel Stone stood before a wall of screens aboard the New Earth. Each display showed different human fleets converging at the rendezvous point beyond. The Galactic Rim. Hundreds of ships carrying millions of people who had decided they deserved better than being permanent second-class citizens. "Status report," Rachel requested. Admiral Kate Hudson appeared on the main screen. "All evacuation. Fleets have cleared council space. We're receiving constant communication requests from alien governments, but no one is responding." Commander Steve Parker stepped forward with a tablet full of messages. "Ma'am, the council is offering significant concessions, voting rights, equal representation, increased funding for human projects." Rachel looked at the offers with cold eyes. "Where were these concessions 3 months ago? Where were they last year when we asked politely?" She turned to address her senior staff. "Record a message for transmission on all council frequencies." The recording equipment activated, and Rachel faced the camera with the dignity that had made her humanity's chosen leader. "To the Galactic Council and all member species," she began. "For 50 years, humanity served faithfully as partners in your great alliance. We built your machines, solved your problems, and advanced your science. In return, we asked only for respect and equal treatment." She paused, letting her words sink in. "You chose to see us as useful tools rather than equal beings. Today, humanity chooses a different path. We are not your enemies, but we are no longer your servants. We wish you well in learning to maintain what we helped you build." The message ended. Within hours, it would reach every world in council space. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been running for 6 hours. Delegate after delegate rose to speak about the crisis affecting their worlds. The chamber that had once been a symbol of unity now echoed with panic and blame. Council Speaker Thylan struggled to maintain order as reports grew worse by the hour. "The communications network is failing across 17 sectors," announced Councilor Vex. "Human-designed relay stations are shutting down without maintenance. Our stellar engineering projects have stopped completely," added Representative Korth from the Builder Worlds. "The humans took all knowledge of mega construction techniques with them." Delegate Zara's metallic voice cut through the noise. Production on the Silicon Worlds has dropped to 15%. Our manufacturing systems were designed by human engineers. Without them, we cannot even perform basic maintenance. Thailand felt the weight of 47 species looking to him for answers he didn't have. The council had grown so dependent on human expertise that losing them was like losing the nervous system of their entire civilization. Send another delegation to negotiate, suggested Councillor Vex. With whom? Thailand replied bitterly. The humans won't tell us where they've gone. Every message we send gets the same response. They're dealing with family matters. Dr. Sandra Lee stood on the observation deck of the colony ship Prometheus, watching the first human settlement take shape on the planet they had named Freedom. Below, construction teams worked with equipment that surpassed anything in council space. These weren't the limited tools they had been allowed to use before. These were machines built with full human innovation unleashed. Engineer Mike Johnson approached her with construction reports. The primary settlement will be complete in 4 weeks. Our building techniques are 40% more efficient than council standard methods. Sandra nodded. What about the industrial facilities? Already operational. We're producing goods that are superior to anything we made while working for the aliens. Without their restrictions and bureaucracy, our productivity has tripled. Sandra watched families moving into homes designed by humans for humans. Children played in parks where human creativity had been given free rein. This wasn't just survival. This was humanity building something better than what they had left behind. Captain Jake Morrison guided his ship through space toward the new human territories. His cargo hold was filled with refugees from the latest council facility failures. More humans were choosing to leave every day as alien governments struggled to maintain basic services. His passenger manifest showed 47 people, researchers, engineers, teachers, and their families. All of them had jobs they could have kept, but all of them had chosen freedom over security. In the passenger area, former factory supervisor Ben Clark sat with retired communications specialist Carol Davis. They shared stories of their years, working for alien employers who had never truly valued their contributions. Do you regret leaving? Carol asked. Ben looked out at the stars ahead. I regret staying as long as I did. We should have done this decades ago. Carol nodded. My Zentari supervisor actually cried when I left, said I was irreplaceable. But in 50 years of working there, he never once asked for my opinion on improving our systems. The ship carried them toward a future where their skills would be appreciated and their voices would be heard. On the industrial world of Korath, factory manager Clith 9 watched his production facilities crumble. Without human supervision, the alien workers had tried to maintain the complex systems. The results were catastrophic. 3 assembly lines had suffered complete breakdowns, safety systems were failing daily, production quality had dropped, so low that other worlds were refusing to buy Korath goods. Clith 9 had sent 17 messages to Ben Clark, the human engineer who had kept everything running smoothly. Every message went unanswered. The human had simply vanished, taking decades of industrial knowledge with him. The Korath government had offered huge sums of money to any human engineer willing to return. So far, none had accepted. The humans seemed to have completely disappeared from council space. Clith 9 stood in the ruins of what had been the galaxy's most efficient manufacturing center. They had built it with human knowledge, but they had never bothered to learn how it actually worked. Research Director Vorthak walked through the empty laboratories on Kepler Station. Dr. Amanda Wells had been gone for 4 months, but her absence felt like losing the heart of their entire operation. The medical research that had promised to save millions of lives across the galaxy had died with her departure. The alien researchers who remained could operate the equipment Amanda had designed, but they couldn't innovate or solve problems the way she had. Every day brought new challenges they couldn't handle. Vorthak had tried to contact Amanda dozens of times. He had offered her triple salary, her own research facility, even a seat on the council's scientific committee. None of his messages received replies. The bitter truth was becoming clear. The aliens had thought they were employing human workers, but the humans had been carrying their entire civilization forward. Without human innovation and problem-solving, the Great Galactic Alliance was slowly grinding to a halt. On New Geneva, humanity's first major independent colony, children attended schools where human history was taught with pride instead of shame. They learned about the Great Exodus, about their people's quiet dignity in the face of disrespect, and about the courage it had taken to walk away from everything familiar. Teacher Emma Ross stood before her class of young humans born since the Exodus. "Why did our people leave the council?" she asked. A 10-year-old boy raised his hand. "Because they treated us like tools instead of people." "That's right," Emma confirmed. "And what did we learn from that?" A girl in the front row answered, "That respect has to be earned by both sides, and sometimes walking away is the strongest thing you can do." Emma smiled. These children would grow up knowing their worth. They would never accept being treated as anything less than equals. The galaxy was learning a harsh lesson about taking others for granted, but humanity was learning something too, that their true strength had never been in serving others, but in building something better for themselves. The Great Reckoning had begun, and there was no going back. 2 years had passed since the Great Exodus began. Counselor Zephyr of the Silicon Collective stood in what had once been the most advanced medical facility in the galaxy. Now it was a monument to technological failure, machines worth billions. Of credits sat silent and useless because no one understood how to repair them. Dr. Yith, the facility's chief medical officer, guided Zephyr through the abandoned wards. "The diagnostic equipment still functions at basic levels," he explained, "but the advanced capabilities are lost. The human doctors modified these systems over decades. We only learned to use them, not to understand them." Zephyr examined a medical scanner that had once been able to detect diseases at the cellular level. Now it could barely function as a simple imaging device. "How many facilities are affected?" "All of them, Dr. Yith replied quietly. Every major medical center in Council space depended on human innovations. Without them, we've lost 50 years of medical advancement. Zephyr felt a familiar sensation of dread. This was happening everywhere. Transportation, systems that had moved billions of beings across the galaxy were breaking down. Communication networks that had connected thousands of worlds were failing. The great civilization that the Council had built was crumbling without the humans who had actually made it work. Captain Mary Foster stood on the bridge of the exploration, vessel Freedom's Edge, as it surveyed another rich system beyond the galactic rim. Her crew of 30 humans had discovered 12 habitable worlds in the past 6 months. Each one offered resources and possibilities that the Council had never dreamed of. "Survey results are in," reported Science Officer Dave Chen. "The 4th planet has rare mineral deposits worth more than entire Council sectors. The atmosphere is perfect for human habitation." Mary nodded, studying the data on her screens. "Any signs of intelligent life?" "None detected. The system appears to be completely uninhabited." Mary smiled. This was the 8th empty system they had found. While the Council struggled to maintain their existing territory, humanity was discovering vast new regions of space filled with untapped potential. "Mark it for colonization," she ordered. "Send the coordinates to the Settlement Planning Committee." Behind them, human space was expanding rapidly. New worlds, new resources, new opportunities that belonged entirely to humanity. They were building an empire based on innovation and respect rather than dominance and service. The Council's first diplomatic mission to human space had been a disaster. Former Council Speaker Thylin led a delegation of 12 species to the edge of human territory, only to be told they needed proper authorization to proceed further. Now Thylin waited in a simple reception area on the border station Hope's Landing. Human officials had been polite but firm. They would meet with council representatives, but only under human terms and conditions. Director Paul Adams entered the waiting area with a calm expression that Thailand recognized. It was the same patient look that humans had worn during decades of council meetings where their voices were ignored. "Thank you for coming," Paul said, taking a seat across from the alien delegation. "Though I should mention that we're quite busy establishing new colonies these days." Thailand leaned forward eagerly. "Director Adams, the Council is prepared to offer significant concessions. Equal voting rights, shared governance, increased representation in all major decisions." Paul listened politely, just as humans had always listened to Council proclamations. "Those are interesting offers, but I have to ask, where were these offers 2 years ago? Or 10 years ago? Or at any time during the past 50 years when we requested them?" The alien delegates exchanged uncomfortable glances. They had no good answer to that question. "We made mistakes," admitted Councillor Vex. "We failed to recognize human contributions properly, but surely we can work together to fix these problems." Paul stood up slowly. "Mr. Vex, fixing problems is what humans have been doing for you for 50 years. Maybe it's time you learn to fix them yourselves." The meeting lasted only 30 minutes. The council delegation left with no agreements, no promises, and no hope of easy solutions to their growing crisis. On New Geneva, the first major human colony, children played in parks designed with technologies that surpassed anything in council space. The city around them hummed with efficient energy systems, clean manufacturing, and transportation networks that worked flawlessly. Engineer Lisa North watched construction crews putting the finishing touches on the latest residential district. Every building incorporated design innovations that humans had developed but never been allowed to implement while working for the council. "Production report," requested her assistant, Tom Bradley. "Industrial output is up another 15% this month," Tom replied. "We're now producing goods of higher quality than anything made in council space, and we're doing it with half the resources they used." Lisa wasn't surprised. Without council bureaucracy and restrictions, human creativity had exploded. Engineers were free to design optimal solutions instead of working within alien-imposed limitations. Scientists could pursue research based on logic rather than political considerations. "What about the trade requests?" Lisa asked. Tom handed her a tablet filled with messages. 47 different council worlds want to buy our manufactured goods. They're offering premium prices." Lisa scrolled through the desperate requests. Worlds that had once treated human products as adequate but unremarkable now begged for access to superior human manufacturing. "Decline them all," she decided. "We have our own people to take care of first." The irony wasn't lost on her. For 50 years, humans had provided the best work they could manage under council restrictions. Now that they were free to work without limitations, they were producing goods so advanced that their former employers couldn't compete. Dr. Janet Clark, Humanities Foreign Relations Director, reviewed intelligence reports about conditions in council space. The situation was deteriorating faster than anyone had predicted. What had started as equipment failures was becoming societal collapse. Unemployment on Centauri Prime has reached 30%, reported intelligence officer Robert Hayes. Their manufacturing sector has essentially shut down without human technical expertise. Medical facilities across the healing worlds are operating at minimal capacity, added analyst Maria Santos. They're experiencing a health crisis because they can't maintain the equipment humans designed. Janet studied the data with mixed feelings. She felt no pleasure in alien suffering, but she also felt no obligation to rescue civilizations that had treated humanity as expendable workers for decades. "Any word on refugee situations?" she asked. "Increasing daily. Many council worlds are experiencing social unrest as basic services fail. Some aliens are requesting permission to immigrate to human space." Janet considered this carefully. "Refugee applications can be reviewed on a case-by-case basis." But make it clear that anyone coming to human space will be treated as equals, not as superior beings expecting service. The galaxy's balance of power was shifting fundamentally. The council that had once dominated galactic politics was becoming a collection of failing states, while humanity built a new civilization based on innovation and mutual respect. Captain Jake Morrison's ship approached New Detroit, humanity's primary industrial world. His cargo holds carried the latest group of human refugees fleeing the collapse of council infrastructure. Each week brought more people who had finally decided that freedom was worth more than familiar suffering. His passenger manifest included Dr. Sandra Williams, who had spent 20 years maintaining alien medical systems before deciding she'd rather help build human hospitals. Engineer Mark Thompson had walked away from a high-paying job fixing alien machinery to join a human construction team. Teacher Helen Garcia had left an alien school where her innovative teaching methods were discouraged to join a human education system that valued creativity. New Detroit Approach Control, this is cargo vessel New Horizon requesting docking clearance, Jake announced. New Horizon, you're cleared for Dock 7. Welcome home. Jake smiled at those words. Welcome home. That's what every human refugee heard when they reached human space. Not questions about their value or their usefulness, but simple recognition that they belonged. Below them, New Detroit sprawled across the planet's surface like a testament to human capability. Factories that produced goods superior to anything in council space. Research facilities pushing the boundaries of science and technology. Cities, where humans lived and worked as equals rather than servants. The passengers on Jake's ship pressed against the viewports, staring in wonder at what humanity had built in just 2 years of freedom. It was more advanced, more efficient, and more beautiful than anything they had left behind. The council had thought humans would come crawling back when their machines started breaking down. Instead, humanity had proven that they were better off without masters who never appreciated their worth. The consequences of 50 years of disrespect were becoming clear. The galaxy was learning that when you treat people as tools, you shouldn't be surprised when they decide to build something better for themselves. The massive chamber stretched out like a small city under the artificial sky of Kepler Station. Jake Morrison walked through the entrance doors and felt the weight of hundreds of alien eyes watching his every step. The human ambassador kept his face calm as he moved toward the central platform where the Galactic Assembly held its meetings. The station itself was a marvel of engineering that belonged to no single species. Built at the exact center of 7 major trade routes, it served as neutral ground for all the civilizations that called this part of the galaxy home. The walls curved up and away until they disappeared into simulated clouds, giving the illusion of standing under an open sky. Soft light filtered down from hidden sources, casting everything in a warm glow that was supposed to make all species feel welcome. Morrison had been here many times before, but today felt different. Today, the very air seemed to buzz with tension and barely hidden hostility. He could feel it in the way conversations stopped as he passed, in the way certain delegates turned their backs when he looked in their direction. His simple black suit stood out among the elaborate costumes and ceremonial robes worn by the other ambassadors. The Vorlax delegation sparkled like living jewels, their crystalline bodies catching and reflecting the chamber light in dazzling patterns. The Nebulan representatives floated in their environmental suits, their gaseous forms swirling in slow, hypnotic dances. The Chitauri clicked and buzzed to each other in their rapid insect language, their multifaceted eyes tracking Morrison's movement across the room. But it was the Zephyrian delegation that drew most of his attention. They occupied the largest section of the assembly floor, their reptilian forms towering over most other species. Their scales ranged from deep emerald to bright gold, and their eyes held the cold intelligence of natural predators. They had ruled this sector of space for over 300 years, and they never let anyone forget it. General Krixtal stood at the center of the Zephyrian group. He was massive even by the standards of his species, standing nearly 9 feet tall with scales that gleamed like polished bronze. Scars from old battles marked his hide, and his claws were decorated with rings that showed his military rank. When he looked at Morrison, his lips pulled back to show rows of sharp teeth. Morrison took his place at the human delegation table. It was smaller than most others in the chamber, with only 3 seats instead of the dozen or more that other species claimed. Only 2 of those seats were filled today. Morrison sat in the center chair while his aide, Lieutenant Karen Walsh, took the seat to his right. The third chair remained empty, a stark reminder of how few humans were considered important enough to attend these gatherings. The session began with the traditional ceremonies. Each species sang, chanted, or performed whatever ritual their culture demanded before official business could start. The humans simply stood in respectful silence during their allotted time, which drew some disapproving looks from the more traditional delegates. Council leader Vexitar called the assembly to order. He was a Vorlax whose crystalline body had grown to impressive size over his long life, indicating both age and wisdom in his species. His voice resonated through the chamber's translation systems, automatically converting his words into the native languages of every delegate present. "We gather today to address territorial disputes in the Outer Rim sectors," Vextar announced. "The Zephyrian Empire has brought concerns regarding unauthorized settlements in systems they claim under ancient right of conquest." Morrison felt. His jaw tightened slightly, but his expression remained neutral. Ancient right of conquest. It was a polite way of saying the Zephyrians had moved into those systems and killed or enslaved whoever was already living there. General Krixtal rose. From his seat, his massive form commanding attention from everyone in the chamber. When he spoke, his voice was a deep rumble that seemed to shake the floor. "The human infestation has grown beyond acceptable limits," he declared, using a word that made several delegates shift uncomfortably. "These creatures have established colonies in 12 star systems that rightfully belong to the Zephyrian Empire. They mine our asteroids, harvest our gases, and pollute our space with their primitive technology." Morrison's aide leaned over to whisper something, but he held up a hand to stop her. He had expected this kind of language from the Zephyrians. They viewed humans as little more than clever animals who had somehow learned to build spaceships. The general continued his speech, gesturing dramatically as he spoke. "We have been patient with these mammals. We have allowed them to exist in our territory because we believed they could be taught to know their place. But they grow bolder with each passing year. They claim rights they have not earned. They demand respect they do not deserve." A murmur ran through the chamber. Some delegates nodded in agreement, while others watched Morrison to see how the human would respond. He remained perfectly still, his hands folded calmly on the table in front of him. "Just last month," Krixtal went on, "human vessels attacked a Zephyrian patrol that was conducting routine security operations. They fired without warning on ships that were merely ensuring the safety of local trade routes." Morrison almost smiled at that. He had read the reports from that incident. The Zephyrian patrol had been in the process of boarding a human merchant ship when 3 Earth Defense Force vessels appeared and ordered them to stand down. When the Zephyrians refused and threatened to fire on the merchant vessel, the human ships had disabled their engines and weapons with surgical precision. No one had been killed, but the Zephyrian patrol had been left floating helpless until rescue arrived. The general's voice grew louder as he reached the climax of his speech. "The Zephyrian High Command has authorized me to deliver an ultimatum. To the human delegation, you will evacuate all 12 contested systems within 30 standard days. You will remove every structure, every mining station, every trace of your presence from space that belongs to us by right of conquest." The chamber fell completely silent. Even the constant background hum of the station's life support systems seemed to fade away. Morrison could feel every eye in the room focused on him, waiting to see how humanity would respond to such a direct threat. Crixtal smiled, showing all of his sharp teeth. If you fail to comply with this generous deadline, the Zephyrian Empire will take whatever action is necessary to cleanse these systems of your contamination. We have over 3,000 warships ready to enforce our will. How many ships do you humans possess? 50? 100 at most? Several delegates laughed at this. It was common knowledge throughout the galaxy that humanity had a small, scattered fleet made up mostly of converted merchant vessels and outdated patrol craft. They had never been involved in a major military conflict, preferring to negotiate and trade rather than fight. Morrison finally stood up, his movement slow and deliberate. At average human height, he was shorter than most of the other delegates, but something in his bearing commanded attention. The laughter died away as he looked around the chamber, making eye contact with representatives from every major species. "General Crixtal," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. "You speak of ancient rites and contamination. You call my people mammals and infestations. You threaten our citizens and demand we abandon our homes." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Before I respond to your ultimatum, I want to make sure I understand the situation correctly. You claim 12 star systems that contain human colonies with a total population of over 40 million people. You want us to simply leave everything behind and go somewhere else. Is that correct?" The general's eyes narrowed. "That is exactly what I am telling you, mammal. Take your breeding stock and find somewhere else to multiply. These systems belong to the strong, not to creatures who hide behind diplomacy instead of showing their teeth." Morrison nodded slowly. "I see. And if we refuse? Then you will learn what happens to those who defy the Zephyrian Empire." Crixtal snarled. "We have crushed dozens of species who thought they could stand against us. Your pathetic little fleet will burn, your colonies will be taken, and your survivors will serve us as slaves until the end of their short lives." The threat hung in the air like poison gas. Morrison looked around the chamber again, noting which delegates avoided his gaze and which watched with obvious interest. The Vorlax seemed uncomfortable with the harsh language, but they made no move to object. The Nebulans floated silently in their suits, impossible to read. The Chitauri clicked excitedly among themselves, perhaps already calculating the profits to be made from human slave labor. 30 days, Morrison said quietly. 30 days, the general confirmed. The human ambassador sat back down, his expression thoughtful. Around the chamber, delegates began to whisper among themselves. Some seemed pleased that the troublesome humans were finally being put in their place. Others appeared concerned about the implications of such direct threats in what was supposed to be a diplomatic forum. Council leader Vextar called for a recess, giving all parties time to consider what had been said. As the various delegations filed out of the chamber, Morrison remained seated at his small table, staring at his hands as if deep in thought.